2018 Special District Fire Study. I'll go over the key little bullet points real quick, and I'll let Mr. Roberson, our Fire Chief and General Manager, speak, because he was involved in this. This is straight after Cayucos Fire Department disbanded. They kind of sent a little shockwave into the area. Like, what are we going to do? This fire department's went under. Designed to look at the physical health of fire departments and unincorporated communities. Was intended to identify projects to support those fire departments, including projects for San Miguel Fire. Nope, before we go there, I'll turn it over to Mr. Roberson if you have anything you want to add to it.
As far as Cayucos?
As the special district study, what you were involved in, what it knew.
Well, staying politically correct, Cayucos had another underlying issue. They have several different water departments. Their district isn't designed with all of their utilities and all of their services under one umbrella. The fire department only had a board of 3 individuals that oversaw the fire protection portion of the district. An individual with a political agenda took the director's seat of that seat of 3 individuals, and he recruited one. He had past fire experience, and without looking at the services, without looking at the history, without looking at the feasibility of that department, he started off with a statement that he was going to shut that department down and turn it over to CAL FIRE. So he proceeded to recruit somebody onto that board of 3 that agreed with him, and when they started the feasible study, because people started complaining about the agenda that this individual had, they had revenues. They had more revenues than we did. They had the ability to get revenues with their transit tax, with people visiting the coastal area and the impact it had on the department. But again, they shot it all down. They complained, said it wasn't feasible. They had 3 times the funds that we had. They have more funds than Templeton. They have more funds than the other departments that struggle with CSDs or maintain with those funds. But anyways, they voted and they painted an ugly picture so they could disband it to meet his political agenda. That's what happened. CAL FIRE didn't want it. CAL FIRE didn't want to go in there, but with LAFCO, in the absence of a district that chose to dissolve by the board of 3, 2 which were agendized, LAFCO picked it up and the county had to take it over. Then when they looked at how it was functioning, they chose the most political, polite, and correct way to move forward was to have the county take it over, take what was left, make something work out of it, and it cost the county about $3 million more a year. Because they're not more efficient than what they were running. But because of that individual's political agenda, they dismantled something that didn't need to happen. Well, the rest of the districts took a look at that, and they wanted to know how the other districts were functioning if Cayucos was in such dire straits. They did a feasible impact study, they looked at everything, and they realized there really wasn't an issue, but they recognized that agenda. They held a meeting at the county office, and the county board of supervisors agendized it, and they reviewed it, and they had a special study done by the former chief of this county, and he looked at it and he commended all the CSDs: San Margarita, San Miguel, Templeton, Cambria. Oceano's an exception, but they're involved in a trio with Grover Beach and Arroyo Grande, but they are working to work that out. That's not necessarily a complete financial issue. That's a political power issue. So anyways, they looked at and commended the districts that were functioning to the point where I try to take the opportunity and lean on the county about the percentage of tax that we collect out of the 1%. And I was reassured that they're not going to change that. There are some other things we can do by the way we operate to change our ability to function, which we're working on, and it's working out fairly well. And we have a lot of things that we need to work on so it keeps us solvent. But the issues that they raised with Cayucos, Like I said, it was a political agenda, and I don't think it was fair to Cayucas. It's not fair to the county or the districts. Everybody else is functioning. There are things that can be done to lessen the impact on us. We can review our community, and we can research impact fees on undeveloped properties. So if we were to move forward, it doesn't affect anybody in this town. It doesn't affect any property owners. Only when someone goes to evaluate the impact it has, that can be assessed, but that would require a study, and then we'd have to petition to the county that any future growth has a certain impact for our service, and that would be a standalone tax on that APN for the life of it if they develop it. And it depends on what type of market they're going to develop it in and what that impact would be. So at this point, with the model that we're running, we're doing fine. It's something with this whole master plan and our growth plan that we need to be very aware of. But that whole thing with Cayucas to me was completely wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Roberson. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mr. Roberson on this, or myself? Directors, public? Okay, 2018 IWA Regional Strategy, IWA Integrated Waste Management Authority. Same group that created Plastic Bag Ban, just so that way people remember that. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but that's just, that was one thing that they did. This strategy is designed to set recycling goals for cities and CSDs as craft sources. If the region doesn't meet its recycling goals, more bans are likely. I don't know if that's correctly. I'm saying correct. Mr. Kardashian is here. He can fill us in on that. And one thing just to note, this board is a 13-member board. It's made up of all 5 supervisors who sit there at this meeting. All cities get 1 representative, and then out of the 10 CSDs that have garbage service, which includes us, we get to share 1 representative. So our combined population of about 60,000 gets 1 voice versus the cities, which get 7. So that's the way it's set up right now. Mr. Kardashian, do you have anything you want to talk about with the regional strategy?
Yeah, I think, what is the slide after, what do you have after this?
Oh, this is it.
What's that?
This is just a then it's more thanks to water and master plan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. So, the regional strategy of the IWMA is a takeoff of Cal Recycle strategy statewide. The reason they even put this regional strategy was in place was because the blue recycle can was actually getting a little bit over-contaminated, and a lot of that has to do with I think families are seeing that recycle it when in doubt, and really that's not the case. You're supposed to be recycling things that are recyclable, and I think it turned into more of, if I'm not sure, I'm going to throw it in the recycle can. Which, to be honest with you, on the processor side is really not that big of an issue, dealing with whatever gets put in there anyway. And a lot of times, some of those items are recyclable. That's why the regional strategy, that's how it even kicked off. There's other things in place now, SB 1383, 1526, have a lot to do with organics. That's the big push right now. Just real quick, so in 2016, they started a deal with local jurisdictions that have organic waste recycling programs in place. They want to see which ones did. Then later in 16, they said, okay, anything with 8 cubic yards of solid waste service has to have organics. Some way of getting rid of it. Organics, unless they were exempt, started with the 8 cubic yards. Now it's down to 4 cubic yards. To give you an example of 4 cubic yards would be like the school, courtside, some of the apartment buildings. So we, Samuel Garbage, took it upon ourselves just to make sure we were compliant every year. So as far as 2020 is concerned, they're down to the 4 cubic yards. everybody in this town is compliant as far as its organics are concerned. Now that being said, they're going to review it in 2020, or they're supposed to review it in 2020 and say, okay, from the 2014 numbers, has there been a 50% reduction in organics out of the waste stream? So our numbers, 2014 numbers, we were collecting in the solid waste stream, 11.94% was being pulled out of the waste stream in the CSD, 11.94. As of June 2020, 20.45% is being pulled out. So not only are we 50%, we're 100% better than we were in 2014. A lot of things, I think that number might be skewed a little bit. 2019 numbers, 20.20. June, we're 20.45. I think it's good. Our recycling number right now is way up. We're actually doing 10% better than the state standard wants us to be in the CSD. I think a lot of that has to do with people staying at home. We're delivering 96-gallon recycled cans instead of 64s. Our facility is full of the Amazon smile. So when you look at what's being thrown away, what people are doing at home, just this whole COVID interaction, we're going to see, I think, a change in I'm hoping we're going to see a change in 2021, and we can get back to some normality as far as people getting back to work and being outside of their homes. But with kids at home, we're not picking up a lot of stuff at the school. We're picking up everything that moms and dads ordered to get those home things ready for the kids. I don't think anybody was expecting. I think we all thought, okay, our kiddos were going to stay at home towards the end of last year's school season. Summer's going to kick this thing out of here, and everybody's going to go back to school, and that's just not the case. And so we're still seeing a lot of recycling. We're seeing a lot of organics, food at home. And so the number's a little bit skewed. However, we are completely compliant. So as far as solid waste, the recycling, the organics, and even the what they consider the commercial and demolition debris and construction debris. So the city of San Luis, or excuse me, the county of San Luis, for new homes being built, requires so much recycling at each site, and it depends on the type you're building, the type of building you're building, the type of resident or commercial that's going into it. And sometimes it's hard. If you're building a steel building and they want a certain percentage of, recycling done, there's just not a lot of recycling that can be done. So what ends up happening is it's kind of good and bad. Is you see the people that are doing the building might clean the site up, and part of that cleanup creates a recycling revenue. So if you had a pile of rubble that can be recycled at, a Vyboard concrete, well, that's a lot of tonnage, and it gets taken care of that way. But as far as the strategy is concerned, we were part of that strategy. They have what's called the haulers meeting. IDMA invites all the haulers in the entire county to get together on the first Tuesday of every month. Sometimes it's canceled because there's not a lot on the agenda, but the first Tuesday of every month we try to get together now on Zoom and just talk about some of the stuff that's going on. They gave us a whole list to mark and say, what is and isn't. And then now there's what's called the recyclist. IDMA hired the recyclist, which is an outside vendor. And like for us, we just submitted all of our commercial accounts for SB 1383. You submit the accounts, you say, okay, these are the accounts we have, because SB 1383 right now is only for commercial. What services do they have? And are those services meeting the requirement of SB 1383? So the IDMA has taken that approach. I like the approach because it kind of is one step out. It says, okay, haulers, tell us what you're doing. And then they basically come back and go, okay, this is where we could step it up, and this is where we're doing what we're supposed to. So I think as far as the strategy for recycling, especially in the town of San Miguel, it's absolutely handled. Throughout the county, it's a little bit more difficult just because logistically, it's not easy to send 3 trucks up Chimney Rock to pick up 6, 7 places that have service. So there'll be a little bit of a logistic troubles, and I think in that and just making it happen, there's supposed to be other things in the strategy, like if there's not so many homes within a certain amount of square miles, then they reduce the amount of actual services required, which actually makes sense because sending a garbage truck all over the place to do not much is just not cost effective, and you know, it's not helping the environment, and that's what we're supposed to be doing with the whole strategy to begin with.
Thank you, Mr. Kardashian. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mr. Kardashian on IWMA? Directors? Thank you, Mr. Kardashian, for coming down here and talking on that. I know this slide doesn't look very pretty, but
It works.
okay. 2019 Council Basin Sustainability Plan governs the CSD's use of groundwater supplies. Includes big projects not likely to happen. There was one project that's something about wheeling water or running water pipes out to the middle of Lozona, if I'm not mistaken. There was a couple of projects. Was it like that? I remember seeing something like that outside of Paso.
Well, we can just say that pretty much all the projects that they proposed are not going to happen.
So, big, wonderful document.
Did you say are not?
They're not cost effective, and there's not a, the return on the investment is very, very little. And it doesn't make any sense.
How big was this document? 400
It's
pages?
pretty large.
State mandated. And this is also you, but the thing about the Paso Basin plan, the state mandated, happened because of new rules, and most of that just won't happen, and we had a great time meeting with all the other agencies and coming up with stuff to throw on a wall. Is that correct?
Well, most of the groundwater sustainability plan is beneficial. It shed light on a lot of things that nobody wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Just the projects portion, which, you know, to be fair, is optional.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to have that.
Right.
But the projects that they chose to include were not viable projects. The only projects that were in there that were viable were the Paso Robles recycled water treatment plant and our recycled water treatment plant. So it's
Okay, and then our water and sewer master plan will affect water and sewer utilities action. Did anyone have any questions on the groundwater sustainability plan before I left that completely? Anyone have any questions on that? Sorry for jumping the gun. No. Okay. The water and sewer master plan will affect water and sewer utilities. The board will get to review this plan at our regular board meeting this month, correct?
that's the plan.
That's the plan. The plan is to review the plan. Don't think does anyone have any questions on this? Mr. Dodge, do you have anything you want to throw out on this?
Just like I said before, the master plans are, especially for water and sewer, are basically the direction you're going and what you need to plan for in the future.
Yes.
Because you are talking about millions of dollars. But it doesn't necessarily include smaller projects that would have been done through a normal budgetary process.
Mr. Dodds, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you feel that the water and sewer master plan is more beneficial and useful than the groundwater sustainability plan?
For the district, yes.
Which month do you anticipate?
The master plan? I've reviewed it, and it's gone back to the engineer, so hopefully he'll have it to you, the final version next week, to be included in the next board packet. So September.
Does anyone have any questions on this document?
It's probably going to be a long meeting anyway.
Government Code 61100. The director's got a copy of this. I didn't know if anyone else got a copy or wanted to see this.
There's extra copies if you need them.
Okay, so if anyone wants an extra copy, you can get it. This is the law that governs what services our CSD can provide to the community. There are 32 services a CSD can provide. The state also grants additional special powers to other CSDs. As an example, some CSDs enforce CCNRs, like homeowners association. Heritage Ranch a long time ago was allowed to operate a gas station. And these need lab code review, which is also why if anyone got a really crazy wild hair, we're just throwing it out there. If you did that, we would want to do it during this municipal service review that we talked about. I know legal is on the phone. Does legal have anything they want to say about our government code 61-100?
Not specifically. I mean, it's one of many government codes that give CSDs specific authority for services that they provide.
Okay. Many CSDs, they provide the basics, as we saw earlier, the water, the sewer, the fire, street lights. And then Government Code 53.31.3 and 53.30.31. 53.31.3.5. These allow the CSDs to create facility districts to finance services and infrastructure. Our Community Facilities District Law, also called a Mellow Roofs District. For example, under the code, it says you could actually create infrastructure, put in a natural gas pipeline. You could set it up so in the vacant lots, they can actually, when they develop, they can get a tax for fire, like Mr. Robertson had said, so it doesn't affect or impact the existing community. And the really interesting part about this is it allows the CSD to pick and choose what properties get service. So I've seen some cities that have this, they look like Swiss cheese because one property has this facilities district, the next property over does not. Our legal, do you have anything you'd like to clarify about the facility district law or Mellow Roofs financing and how it works?
That is such a large considered concept, but as far as clarification, I mean, I think again, 53.313 and 0.5, they talk about just another enacting section about what services or specifically programs, that type of thing that a special district can provide. And then the 0.5 is really about like financing and what money can we spend for in terms of improvement to property. That type of thing. So the enacting section giving authority to the
Can everyone hear legal clearly? Is there anything else you want to add about this section? Especially having on the phone.
I'm sorry, was that answer?
Is there anything else you want to add about this section since we have you on the phone about this? Because I know that the facilities district law is kind of abstract in and of itself. It's a lot that it can do.
It encapsulates so many other issues as far as revenue and taxation. So it seems to me in reviewing these in the context that we're talking about, it's kind of laying the foundation for the strategic plan about building districts and annexation of property, that type of thing. So these are the provisions of California law that guide some types of decisions or goals for the district.
Thank you so very much. And then also, just to add on to that, it will allow CSD to partner with another agency, like the school, the county, the utility company, or another CSD to create one financing agency to provide services to the community. Because as we saw earlier, our property tax allotment is pretty much locked in place. So can't really do much of that, but you could possibly maybe negotiate some property tax revenue from like the school if we create a financing district for them for new properties and so on and so forth. So there's ways to work around it. It's a very big law that allows for a lot of innovation and thought. Is that correct? Did I say that correctly, legal?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions on this?
So give me an example of partnering with another agency.
So, as an example, this actually happens in other communities, is right now San Diego does not have a park and rec program. And I'm only throwing this out as an example. We're not saying to do that, so don't shoot the messenger right now. Okay. The San Miguel School has a baseball team and has soccer fields, regulation-sized soccer fields. If somebody said, you know what, we want a park and rec program in the community, and we want new development to pay for it, well, let's open up the school's facilities for that service. We could do that. We can partner with them. We can create that funding mechanism that we can share and figure out who's going to operate it and everything else. Also, because schools are always struggling for funding, in that same facilities agreement, we can also then say, all right, since we have this, when for new properties that develop, we can say that the school will get X amount of dollars for every new building that comes on in. This, as I noticed in the code, I think it's the next point, it can be used as an alternative to impact fees. Is that correct, legal?
If I'm following you, yes.
Okay, so right now we charge we charge so much for water and sewer infrastructure. Development pays it up front. As an alternative, you could say instead of paying it up front, we're going to make you pay so much of it every year for either X amount of years or in perpetual.
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions on this? No? Did I answer your question? And this also does not meet lab code review. So it actually said, if I remember correctly, it's at the bottom, LAFCO can't interfere with a facilities district. Is that correct, legal? Or did I misinterpret that?
I'm not totally well versed in LAFCO,
Okay.
procedurally, so I just don't want to overstate or understate anything.
Right, that's fine. I just remember seeing that, and that's what I remember, but don't shoot the messenger if LAFCO shows up and says, hey, since you guys are now funding Park and Rec, we want you to send us a review and a services report.
Right.
Okay, so the next steps would be to set a meeting date, figure out what this all meant, if we should move forward, where do we go from here? That was my presentation, and I made sure to make it up to the time allotment. So,
You did.
Does anyone have any other questions for me on this slideshow? I hope I didn't put everyone to sleep.
Super interesting.
You did good.
No, thanks.
Excellent presentation.
Very well done. So, looking at things in terms of taking next steps, what do you view as the next steps? One of the things that we spoke of before this meeting was identifying what we want to achieve and how to get there.
Yes.
So, is that the next step? Is identifying specific goals?
We can identify specific goals on what we want to work on. The other thing that I've seen in a similar format from Strong Towns is what they do is a visual assessment of their community. So if somebody gets a wild hair and says, you know what, this town, it needs a community garden, all right? We're going to run off, we're going to build a community garden. Well, we actually have one in the community, but we want to see what the heck happened to it. Kind of things like that. And also visualize how everything connects. As another example, we talk about the mission. We talk about how do we get people from the mission into our downtown so people want to come to downtown, shop downtown, build downtown, live downtown, all that fun stuff. So we're getting tax revenue. Well, a visual assessment will identify what is wrong. Why is it disconnected? What could the district do in its existing authority or under the 61-100 do in small steps to make people want to go downtown? As an example, there's no trees on the sidewalk between the Mission and downtown. It's 120 degrees outside. Someone may not want to walk their dog to downtown. So things like that, as an example, that is through. Or wayfinding signs, other little tiny things. I know I've spoken with the Director Graver in the past, at the wine trail, you show up the Mission, there's no sign saying where can I go to the wineries, where can I go to our local wineries and go support them. Little things, and that's what a visual assessment will do sorry, then we can say, okay, well, what do we have? What can we make work? How can we improve our finances? But I'm not sure where that would fit in with, or what step, where we want to do our goals first, or how, because this is kind of new territory for me, and I'm just doing the best that I can. So please forgive me and don't shoot the messenger.
So something like that, when you're talking about identifying wineries in the community for people to patronize, philosophically,
I just read as an example.
no, but I'm using your example. Philosophically, my thought would be that the cost to market a plan and or produce signs and place signs would be borne by the wineries. Because they're the ones that stand to gain financially.
Right.
Certainly, the community would stand to gain tax revenue potentially, but realistically, I mean, they're the ones that should be drawing the customers into town.
Absolutely.
So,
But and that's also part is identifying partnerships where we can do that, because I know in other communities, Gilroy is an example, which I was there not that long ago. They have wayfinding signs. One slot says wineries this way, the other slots say town park this way, downtown this way, all the other things. And because we're the agency, we have the authority to put those signs in place, while the private person can't put that sign.
sure. I think it needs to be a two-pronged attack in that, because again, it's financial resources, but also regulatory resources and or authority to do such a thing. So I think you need to look at that as a partnership and melding that kind of idea.
Just speaking on that one example that you're saying, that is kind of what happens is, the private sector wants to do it, the government, county,
Right.
is saying no. So that's why it is good, that partnership.
Yeah, if we have the authority as,
Yeah.
as our own
Yeah.
governments.
I'm thinking, Anthony, it would be good either by, like you're saying, a walking tour, but basically, to kind of list situations, problems, whatever you want to say, in our community, and then decide, is it a CREST or is it a master, right? Is it something real quick and easy that you could do, or is it something that's more of a bigger? Am I getting that? Is that kind of the feel?
That would be correct. I know I originally was suggesting putting out a survey to directors and potentially staff members, identifying potential facilities, going from there, and then we can think about, like, we want to have maybe, my personal opinion, I'd love to have natural gas downtown. That would be a big project that we can do. That's not a small project though, obviously.
Right, that's not a CREST.
But we can still do that. We can still throw a big project. You just don't want to create, I'm going to throw them under the bus, the Paso Basin plan where you create, I need $10 million for something that may never happen.
So basically what you're not wanting to see is little items underneath a master plan that get forgotten or get
Right, we want to have
looked over. So you're kind of separating out the little stuff